What is going on, everybody? It is the Icebreaker here, back with another video. More content for you guys. And in this video, like we already did the Eastern Conference standings predictions for the NBA season, we got to go out west and do these Western Conference standings predictions. So, looking into this Western Conference, I am very excited. There's a lot of teams that I think are going to be a lot better. I think the Western Conference, for a conference that's been considered the stronger conference for so long, I honestly don't think it's ever been as deep as it could potentially be this season. So there's going to be a lot of great teams, a lot of maybe 50-win teams. We'll see what happens. But anyway, let's get into these Western Conference standings, kicking off with the 15th seed. Kicking things off with my prediction to be the worst team in the West. I'm going with the San Antonio Spurs. As you guys can see, I don't think they're going to have a very good season. I think they're maybe the worst team in the NBA, if I'm being totally honest. Have been winning only 15 games. I just think they're clearly rebuilding. They're tanking now. They traded DeJounte Murray. This team is not expected to compete. I don't think this team wants to win games. They made that abundantly clear with that Murray trade. Also, like I said, with the West getting a lot scarier, I really don't see how a team like the Spurs can really make up any ground or gain any ground in this Western Conference. Although I do think there are some solid players. I think a lot of people look at a guy like Keldon Johnson maybe being like a popular breakout type of player. But, apart from that, the rebuild has officially begun. I don't think the Spurs are going to be very good. There's like some of the other bottom tier teams in the Western Conference I think are just better and are further ahead in their rebuild and just have more, young talent coming up. And the Spurs are kind of just starting that rebuild. So for that reason, I think they're going to be the worst team in the West and the worst team in the NBA. Next up here, 14th seed in the West, kind of in a similar situation, but I think are a little bit better. I got the Houston Rockets with a 21-61 record. I like their young core, and I think they are moving in a great direction. However, like I said before, with how much deeper the West is getting, I don't see much room for improvement for this Rockets team, to be honest. I think they are going to lose a lot of games, as expected, though. Still going to struggle, but obviously, you have Jalen Green, who I think is going to be quickly a star in this league in the short-term future. You got Jabari Smith Jr., who they just drafted. Even Şengün down the middle, I really think he's a very underrated player. He had a very underrated rookie season, although statistically didn't light the world on fire, only averaged like 10.6 rebounds, I believe. But still, I think there is some upside there that people got to maybe pay a little bit more attention to. So yeah, solid pieces that they're going to be building around. They're establishing their core, but the Houston Rockets still nowhere near ready to compete for a championship, and definitely a few years away from even being a play-in or playoff contender. So yeah, they're definitely going to be one of the worst teams in the Western Conference. But again, bright future. Down the line, they are going to be a really good team, but just not this next season. Just with the West, it's just too deep. At the 13th spot in the West, I got the Oklahoma City Thunder with a 25-57 record. Again, another young rebuilding team. Don't see a ton of improvement really, just with the depth of the Western Conference next year. But, a big reason why they probably shouldn't be that much better than last year is because of that massive injury to Chet Holmgren, who was their second overall pick and was expected to make a huge impact in the Thunder, potentially improving to, maybe challenging for a play-in spot. But that's probably out the window now with him missing the entire season, or at least expected to miss the entire season. Also, the MCL sprain to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, that could set him off a little bit. I think he's only supposed to miss like the beginning of training camp, but he could be out a little bit longer. Who knows with that? So they have a little bit of injury issues to start the season, obviously, or they're going to endure throughout the year without Chet Holmgren. So for that reason, the Thunder are probably not going to be that much better, even though they still have a very solid nucleus with Lou Dort and Josh Giddey, and of course Shai Gilgeous-Alexander if he is healthy. I mean, this guy averaged 25 points a game last year, so he is an all-star caliber player. And, he could be a big reason why the Thunder maybe are a lot better. But again, the depth in the West, and they're still, kind of finding themselves, still establishing that core, establishing chemistry. I still think there is a lot of growing pains to be had for this Thunder team. The rebuild definitely still is in full force. So, in my estimation, I don't expect them to be all that much more competitive. So that's why I have them 13th. 12th in the West, I got the Utah Jazz with a 26-56 record. I feel like a lot of people are already, kind of counting the Jazz team completely out and saying that they're maybe the worst team in the NBA, or at least the worst team in the West. Definitely they are starting a rebuild with the recent trades of Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, and most recently Bojan Bogdanovic. But I still think they do have some decent established veteran players. So until those guys are moved, I think that's what's keeping me from putting them like as a true bottom feeder, even though I still have them under 30 wins and they're not going to be very good. I definitely still could envision them being a little bit better than teams like Oklahoma City, San Antonio, and Houston. But yeah, like, the Joe Ingles, Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conleys of the world, I still think those are all very solid players. So as long as those guys are still in the lineup and not traded, that's why the Jazz are probably not necessarily going to be the worst team in the NBA. That's what's keeping them, away from that bottom tier area. But still, they are going to be among one of the worst teams in the NBA as a whole. Again, the Western Conference, a lot better. Utah Jazz are definitely not going to be part of that true competition, in my opinion. So definitely starting a rebuild. They're going to build around, I guess, Colin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen, the guys they got in that Donovan Mitchell trade, and just acquiring a ton of draft picks in both the Mitchell and Gobert trade. It's going to be an interesting couple of years for Utah, see how that rebuild goes. But yeah, right now, definitely nowhere close to a playoff team. That era of Mitchell Gobert is past. Coming in as the 11th seed in the West, I got the Sacramento Kings with a 35-47 record. I do kind of like the moves they made. Obviously, they got De'Aaron Fox, they got Domantas Sabonis. First kind of full season with those two as the duo together. Maybe they can build some more chemistry and just be more impactful and impact more winning more games. Obviously, drafting Keegan Murray, I believe he is going to win Rookie of the Year. He is my pick, even though there's a ton of great candidates to pick from. I do believe Keegan Murray has a very high ceiling. I think he's going to make an amazing impact for this Kings team. Definitely on the rise, but again, in the deep Western Conference, I do believe they are going to just barely miss out on that play-in tournament. But like I said, still going to be competitive. 35-win team, I think, is decent. At least, the Kings are showing that they are maybe going to be on the rise. There's something to cheer about finally in Sacramento, and that hasn't been the case for the past 20 years, if we're being totally honest. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of excitement, but again, I don't know if they're good enough to make the playoffs, but we'll see. If they have if a lot of things go right, they could find themselves in the play-in tournament, but I'm not holding my breath for that, to be honest. At the 10th seed in the West with a 40-42 record, I'm going with the Portland Trailblazers. I do think they are good enough to sneak into a play-in tournament spot. Damian Lillard fully healthy, him alone keeps this Blazers team relevant and in playoff contention. Obviously, Yusuf Nurkic being fully healthy definitely should be a huge boost for them. They added some good depth pieces like Jeremy Grant in the offseason. Alfred Simons, very solid, sixth man type of player. I definitely think he has a pretty high ceiling. He played really well, especially when Damian Lillard was struggling and obviously had some injury issues as well. So yeah, I do think they are good enough to make the play-in tournament, but again, I don't think they're any higher than 10th in the West. I think there are 9 teams that are clearly above them in terms of just those teams and how they're made up. I definitely think that they are a pretty mid team, but like I said, Damian Lillard's going to keep them relevant. He's probably going to get them into the playoffs, or at least in the play-in tournament. But there is the potential that he could carry this Blazers team into an 8th seed. I would not be surprised whatsoever, because it is Damian Lillard. Dame time, he's probably the most clutch player in the NBA. So he definitely has that capability of carrying a team like the Blazers to the promised land and get into the playoffs. But I still think I would probably bet on their ceiling being just a play-in team. But we'll see what happens with Portland. They're kind of mid, but yeah, I guess I just see other teams in the West with higher ceilings. That's really all I have to say about Portland. Coming in at 9th in the Western Conference, I'm going with the LA Lakers with a 45-37 record. Now, this is what I'm kind of alluding to with how deep the Western Conference is. I have the Lakers with 45 wins. For an average conference, that could be good enough for like a 7th, maybe even a 6th seed if it's really more of a weaker conference. But 45 win team only being 9th, that is pretty bold, I would say. But honestly, I did all the math with the playoff predictor and all that stuff, so this stuff does check out. But I just look at the Western Conference. I see just a tale of two tiers of teams. There's just the really strong teams, and then there is the awful weak teams, and then there's like the in-between teams like the Trailblazers and the Kings. But for me, I just feel like those bottom teams are just going to really struggle so much. They'll be so bad that I can honestly see the Western Conference kind of skewing this way. So that's why I could see a team like the Lakers being an above 500 team, well above 500 team, but not even cracking the top 8 in the West. But anyway, getting into this Lakers team as a whole, I just think they are an older core, and although I do think they are going to be a lot better than they were last season, I have a lot of questions with what this team really is. I do think LeBron James, obviously, he's going to do his thing. He is LeBron. He's ageless. He ages like fine wine. He's going to be, one of the better players in the NBA still. But just everything surrounding him, I have concerns. Anthony Davis, hopefully he has a kind of a bounce back season, but I question his health at this point. He just can never stay healthy, can never stay consistently in the lineup and just help the team win games on a consistent basis. And you look at other things like Russell Westbrook's fit, he's in trade rumors. I don't know if they're planning on bringing him back or if they're planning on shipping him off. And if he does end up staying, can he have a bounce back season as well? Or is it going to be more of the same that could really hurt the Lakers as a result? And just the supporting cast as a whole, not a huge fan. I don't think they have a lot of great shooting. And again, a much older core, in my opinion. I think they're good enough to be relevant with LeBron James obviously carrying that roster. But even with him, I still could see the possibility of them still missing the playoffs, even though they are going to be better. The West just got so much better this offseason. So a team like the Lakers, even though they are good enough to make the play-in, could be on the outside looking in come playoff time. And from here on out, this is where things really got tough for me. It really came down to the wire with ranking these teams. But to be honest, maybe this is a bold take, but in 8th, I'm actually going with the Dallas Mavericks here at a 47-35 record. I think a lot of people are favoring Luka Doncic to win that MVP. I mean, he always puts up MVP type numbers. He could be a guy that can obviously carry this Mavericks team like he does every season, put up 30 points, maybe even average a triple-double, be like the Russell Westbrook MVP season and wheel this team to the playoffs. I could see a scenario like that, but there's a reason why I only have the Mavs as an 8th seed. I just don't like the team as much around him. I mean, obviously, they have some decent players. I think Spencer Dinwiddie has a little bit more to give. And he showed some spurts of being a very impactful player. The Christian Wood trade there that brought him in. I think he could be a great lob threat with Luka Doncic. I honestly think he's very underrated, especially during his time in Detroit more specifically. But I'm not sure if they're better than other teams in the West. I just think other teams in the West are just a lot deeper overall. But again, with Luka Doncic, you just never know. Obviously, he is capable of giving this Mavericks team home court advantage in the first round like he did last season. They were the 4th best team and a 50-win team. I don't have them much worse. It's just with the depth of the West, I have them as a lower seed. However, look, Luka's definitely going to do his thing. He's going to carry them into the playoffs, but to be honest, I don't truly believe they are a legit contender. I just think Luka Doncic just needs some support. I think he needs another all-star caliber player to really get that Mavs team into legit contention status, because I don't think Luka can do it on his own. And again, the supporting cast just not really the biggest fan of, so that's why I only have them as the 8th seed, but they are going to be a playoff team. But honestly, I can only see them as a first-round exit. Coming in at the 7th seed in the West with a 48-34 record, I got the New Orleans Pelicans. This is a team that is very exciting. They were able to make the playoffs despite not having Zion Williamson for basically the entire season. But they were well under 500, I believe, at the end of the regular season. But with the improvement in the West, especially with the team like the Pelicans, who I think are going to be a lot better this season, they're going to be one of the lower seeds in my opinion. I think a lot of people are projecting them to maybe be getting home court advantage. We'll see how, integrating back Zion into the lineup, how good they play. But obviously he was very dominant before he went down with injury. But I still think the Pelicans are going to be a much, much more improved team and definitely a tough out in the playoffs. You got Brandon Ingram, who is an underrated all-star caliber player. You got CJ McCollum, who's just a great veteran, just a reliable scorer. And obviously Zion back, fully healthy and in shape, which is the key. But if he does stay healthy, the Pelicans are definitely a playoff team. and a huge threat at that. I'm definitely going to tamper my expectations, like I said, of them finishing higher. I really just got to see it to believe it, integrating back Zion to see how dominant they can really be. But I think this is quite fair, knocking on the door of 50 wins. Being in that 5 to 7 range is probably the most likely outcome for this Pelicans team with how good the West is. But I definitely think this is a breakout season for this team as a whole. And they're going to be a huge threat in the coming years. And coming in at the 6th seed in the West, I also got the Minnesota Timberwolves with a 48-34 record. But I just gave them the edge with the tiebreaker. It kind of worked out that way in the playoff predictor thing. So I gave them the 6th seed. But regardless, basically more of the same, just a very young team that's up and coming and got significantly better this offseason. Obviously, it wasn't with injuries. It's with who they acquired via trade. Rudy Gobert, on his own, he can make an average defense and turn them into an elite defense. So, a team like the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have a plethora of just elite offensive talent, like Karl Anthony Towns, even D'Angelo Russell, I would argue, is still very good offensively. And, of course, Anthony Edwards, who in my opinion is their best player and is poised to have an amazing, maybe even step to superstar level. And at a certain point, maybe be a top 10 player in the NBA. I think he definitely has that ceiling. So you add Rudy Gobert to that, definitely going to improve their team defensively, which just makes the Timberwolves that much more of a threat, especially entering this season. It's borderline an elite team, in my opinion, and I think they have the potential to upset any higher seed in the first round just with the plethora of options that they have. The Timberwolves are on the up and up, and they're going to be a contending team in the not too distant future if they potentially aren't already. They could potentially be a top 3, top 4 seed and just completely blow all expectations out of the water and exceed everything and be like a 50 plus win team. Who knows? But Timberwolves on the upswing, going to be an amazing team. I have them in 6th, just kind of again tampering the expectations because we haven't seen how the Rudy Gobert situation is going to work out. Implementing him into the lineup to complement those young Timberwolves players. But Minnesota, definitely a huge threat. 5th in the West, you could argue maybe they're a bit lower than what maybe some people would have them, but I'm going with the Denver Nuggets as the 5th seed with a 50-32 record. I still think this is a great team that's going to be much better than they were last season. Obviously, Nikola Jokic, 2-time MVP, probably should have another MVP caliber season. We'll see if he can win 3 in a row. I think it's unlikely at this point because there is the voters' bias. They don't want to pick the same guys over and over again. That definitely is a thing. But still, he's obviously going to get his numbers and impact winning on this Nuggets team. But now you add Jamal Murray back into the lineup. You add Michael Porter Jr. back into the lineup. Obviously, on paper, this is going to be a much better team. Now, I will say, although I think they are going to return to being like an elite status, the only reason why I have them 5th is I could see a little bit more of an adjustment period just for Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. to kind of return to the peak level that they were at before those injuries. It usually could take a while for them to kind of get their groove back into it. So I could see the Nuggets maybe getting off to a slightly slower start, especially like the first quarter, the first half of the season. But I definitely think, maybe there's a mid-season trade that goes on in Denver and they kind of just surge the second half of the year and end up with a 50-win season and be, a legit opportunity for them to advance in the playoffs, get to a second round, maybe even a Western Conference Finals. Then the Nuggets have been there before with that young core. They can definitely be one of the better teams in the West come playoff time. So they're definitely gonna be a great team by the end of the season and challenge for a Western Conference crown. But as of right now, again, still think they're gonna be struggling a little bit with those injuries. Coming back, implementing those guys in the lineup, but still obviously going to be an elite team, and of course, super competitive in the playoffs and definitely a tough out. Coming in as a 4th seed in the Western Conference, I'm going with the Memphis Grizzlies to finish with a 51-31 record. I just think, you could argue that there was some slight overachievements last year with, the 56 wins, the 2nd seed in the West. I think, especially when Ja Morant went down, that depth just really stepped up and they were just so dominant. Like, for lack of a better term, they were outright dominant without him in the lineup. I could see that being slight fallback, especially if Morant does get hurt. But overall, I think this team has insane chemistry. Any guy can get hot at any given game. Ja Morant is a superstar caliber player. supporting cast, like I said, I believe it's among the best in the NBA, and they proved that last year. So I definitely still think they should have a dominant enough season in the Western Conference. Yeah, they're definitely among the best teams in the West. They're capable of going on a deep playoff run again. I believe there's a lot of like legit contenders in this Western Conference. And the Memphis Grizzlies, although maybe are not like a front runner or a favorite, they definitely should be among one of those favorites to come out of the West. Third seed in the West, I got the Phoenix Suns with a 52-30 record. Now, I still believe the Suns are going to be a very good team. However, I do have concerns about kind of the direction the team is going as a whole, with the Western Conference getting a lot better and a lot deeper. I don't envision them winning 60-plus games again. I don't see it. Although I still think they do have the chemistry. I'm not sure I think we've kind of already seen the peak Phoenix Suns, and I only think they're going to start to get a little bit worse as time goes on. Especially when you're considering an aging CP3, Chris Paul, obviously impactful point guard. He impacts winning, but as he continues to get old, another year older, his game is at some point going to really start to decline and definitely hurt the Phoenix Suns, because the Suns were not really that relevant of a team before Chris Paul got there. So as his play starts to diminish, I really think it could be the same for the Phoenix Suns as a whole. So I think they are going to be a little bit worse, although I still envision them being a very good team in the regular season, top 3 team in the West, 50-plus win team, especially when you can still have guys like Devin Booker and Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges, who was a Defensive Player of the Year nominee. I honestly believe he should have won it, but that's just my opinion. But overall, they're still a great team. Now, there is some, rumblings that they're probably planning on trading Jay Crowder. So, that could be cause for concern. I definitely think he is a solid player. I don't know what type of return they can get to replace him. So, with that could impact their team a little bit. But overall, I still think it's not to the point where I think it's going to, have them miss the playoffs entirely. The Suns are still going to be one of the more elite teams in the West. They should have home court advantage in the first round. I would expect them to be at the very least a 4th seed, if not a 3rd seed. So yeah, I don't expect a huge drop-off, but definitely not going to be as good as they were last year. But still one of the elite teams in the NBA. Coming in as the 2nd seed in the West, I'm going with the Golden State Warriors. I have them tying with the Suns in the record at 52-30. However, I guess I have them with a tiebreaker. There's no reason to believe why the Warriors should not be a top 2 or top 3 seed in the Western Conference like they were last year. The defending NBA champions, obviously, they're elite all the same, even though I do think there could be, some concern that they maybe start to kind of coast a little bit during the regular season, but they're definitely still capable of winning well over 50 games. Stephen Curry, MVP caliber player, obviously finals MVP. Klay Thompson, especially if he kind of gets back to the old Klay Thompson, the Warriors are probably even the best team in the NBA if he can get that fire under him and just be, old Klay Thompson, right? And be one of the more elite shooting guards in the NBA. Obviously, Draymond Green is the perfect glue guy of any NBA team, in my opinion. Just a bunch of young complementary pieces like Andrew Wiggins and maybe a guy like James Wiseman and Jonathan Kuminga take massive steps forward to make that Golden State Warriors team potentially even better than they were last season when they won the championship. But the Warriors obviously still an elite team. No reason to believe why they shouldn't be one of the better teams in the regular season. And, to be honest, they should probably still be a front runner to repeat as NBA champion. However, I am going with the Los Angeles Clippers to win the Western Conference as far as the regular season is concerned. I have them winning 55 games and 27 losses. I just think they're getting healthy. They missed the playoffs last year, but you bring back Kawhi Leonard when healthy. Is a top 5 player in the NBA, in my opinion. Obviously, a 2-time Finals MVP, 2-time NBA champion, trying to bring a championship to LA as far as the Clippers. Obviously, Paul George, one of the more underrated superstars, in my opinion. I think a lot of people give him a lot of flack, especially for some of his shortcomings in the past and playoffs, but he is one of the better two-way players in the league. He's an elite offensive player, can do a little bit of everything, and one of the better defenders in the NBA. And not only those two guys, but they have among the deepest teams in the league. You have Robert Covington, Norman Powell, just amazing 3-and-D guys who can just contribute. You can start them. You can have them come off the bench. Just a ton of options there. You got Luke Kennard, one of the better three-point shooters, had an amazing season in that regard. You got Reggie Jackson, who's probably honestly, he's a solid point guard. Could probably be a good sixth man off the bench. And even John Wall, I don't know if we're going to get the same all-star type of John Wall, but I definitely think he is a very solid option in that starting point guard role. Not to say that he is going to be the same guy, the superstar he was with the Wizards, or that same athletic guy, but I definitely think there is some parts of his game that could definitely be a huge boost to this Clippers team. They've always kind of lacked that, that premier point guard, that guy who can really, be a floor general and just generate everything on offense and be just a great facilitator for all those just amazing wing players that the Clippers have. So, maybe he's not going to pop off statistically, but I could see him, having like a type of 18-point a game, like 8 or 9 assists a game, just be more of a facilitator, just be impactful in that regard. And I think that could really help the Clippers a lot. I definitely think John Wall has a capability of just returning to being just a very solid player in this league, maybe even a borderline all-star. We'll see. But I think the Clippers just have a plethora of depth. And for that reason, even if, a guy like Kawhi has like some load management things and only plays like no more than like 65 to 70 games, I still think this Clippers team is deep enough that they could legitimately win the Western Conference, not only in the regular season, but could be a front runner to come out of the West and represent that conference in the NBA Finals. So with that is going to wrap up my complete Western Conference standings for this upcoming NBA 2022-2023 season. Just like I did in the Eastern Conference, let me know in the comments section if you feel so kind. Let me know if you agree with the picks or if you disagree. Give me your rankings of the standings, how you see the Western Conference shaping up. I'm okay with all the nice comments, all the criticism. Just fire them my way. I'm open to all the discussion. Love engaging with you guys, so don't be shy to hit me up with a comment. And if you have any questions or concerns or just an insult, you wanna say some, you don't want to talk shit to me or whatever, I'm a big boy, I can take it. So anyway, thank you guys for watching this video. It was a lot of fun to do. Love covering basketball. Maybe I'll do some more basketball videos in the future. And as always, I'll talk to you in the next one. I'll see you guys later.